Have you ever felt your entire world fall apart in a single moment? For Maggie Reynolds, that moment came at exactly 7:32 on a Tuesday morning. This is a story about how devastating lies can shatter a perfect life, but it is also about how a woman, pushed to the edge, can find the strength to fight back. Stay with me to see how she gets her justice. This story will show you that your worth is never defined by someone else's betrayal. Whether you are 30, 50, or 70, it is never too late to discover who you truly are and build the life you deserve. If you have ever felt trapped, underestimated, or thrown away by someone you trusted, this story is for you. The phone rang, and Maggie knew the exact time because she was staring at the clock, her coffee turning cold in her hands. A professional voice on the other end asked for Mrs. Reynolds. When Maggie confirmed it was her, the woman identified herself as Detective Sarah Walsh from the Manhattan Police Department. She said, "We need you to come down to the station. It is about your husband, Richard Reynolds." The coffee cup simply dropped from Maggie's grasp, shattering on the marble floor of their lavish Park Avenue home. The detective's voice asked if she was still there, but Maggie could only watch the dark liquid spread across the spotless white floor, a perfect symbol for the cracks appearing in her 22-year marriage. "I am here," she finally managed to say. "What happened? Is Rick okay?" The detective replied, "No, ma'am, he is not hurt. But there was an incident involving your husband and a young actress named Sophia Blake." The news is already calling it the scandal of the year. Just then, Maria, their housekeeper of 15 years, appeared in the doorway, her face etched with worry. In all her time working for them, she had never seen Maggie so much as drop a napkin. "Are you all right, Mrs. Maggie?" Maria asked gently, already moving to clean up the mess. Maggie raised a hand to stop her, the phone still pressed to her ear. She asked the detective, "What kind of incident?" The detective explained, "Ma'am, your husband was photographed leaving the Ritz-Carlton at 2 in the morning with Miss Blake. On top of that, there are accusations of problems with the company's money. We need you to come in and answer a few questions." Each word felt like a punch to the gut. Her soon-to-be ex-husband, a millionaire, had not only been cheating on her, but was also, apparently, a thief. The perfect life she had so carefully constructed, with its social events, charity dinners, and beautifully decorated penthouse, was all turning to dust. "I will be there in an hour," she heard herself say. Maria was still standing nearby with a broom, her expression full of concern. "It is okay, Maria. Just leave the mess for now." Maggie's voice sounded strangely calm, even to her. "I have to get dressed and go downtown." She walked into her bedroom, feeling completely numb, her bare feet making no sound on the expensive Italian marble. The master bedroom was a testament to Rick's wealth. It had sheets with a thread count of 1,200, a custom-made mahogany headboard that cost more than a car, and a walk-in closet bigger than most city apartments. Maggie looked at her reflection in the mirror. She saw a 47-year-old woman who had just learned her life was a complete fraud. Her auburn hair was perfectly styled from a salon visit the day before. Her skin was flawless, thanks to the most expensive dermatologist in the city. She was wearing a silk nightgown that cost $800. But none of that mattered now. She chose a navy blue Chanel suit, treating it like a suit of armor for the battle ahead. As she got dressed, the initial shock began to fade, replaced by a cold, sharp focus. After 22 years together, she was learning about her husband's affair from a police detective, not from Rick himself. The elevator ride down to the ground floor felt like it took forever. Harold, the doorman, tipped his hat as she walked by. "Good morning, Mrs. Reynolds. Should I get a car for you?" "Yes, please," she replied. "To the police station downtown." Harold's face showed no surprise. The rich in Manhattan often had strange destinations. The taxi ride through the morning traffic gave Maggie a moment to think. She finally did what she had been dreading and pulled out her phone to search her husband's name. The headlines were everywhere. CEO, Richard Reynolds in hotel scandal with actress Sophia Blake. Reynolds Industries stock drops after the news. Is a divorce coming for the power couple? The pictures were impossible to deny. There was Rick, her handsome 52-year-old husband, wrapped in an embrace with a woman who could have been his daughter. Sophia Blake was 28 years old, blonde, beautiful, and the exact opposite of Maggie. Her phone was buzzing with texts from worried friends, but she ignored every single one. She would deal with that later. The police station was a large granite building in Lower Manhattan, already swarmed by news vans and reporters. Maggie paid the cab driver and walked straight through the crowd, holding her head high. She ignored the questions being yelled at her and the flashing cameras. Mrs. Reynolds, did you know about the affair? Margaret, are you filing for divorce? Do you have any comment on your husband's business deals? She pushed through the station's glass doors, relieved to finally be in a quieter space. A woman in her 40s with a badge on her belt came up to her and said, Mrs. Reynolds, I am Detective Walsh. Thanks for coming. What is really going on, Detective? Maggie asked. Let's sit down, and I will tell you everything. They went into a small conference room with harsh lighting and plain carpet. Detective Walsh opened a large file. Mrs. Reynolds, we have been looking into some strange activity at Reynolds Industries for a few months. Last night, we were watching your husband when we saw him meet with Miss Blake. While we were watching, we found proof of what looks like him stealing money from his own company. The word embezzlement hit Maggie like a wave of cold water. It seems your husband has been secretly moving money from the company's charity foundation into his own private accounts. We are talking about several $1 million over the last 3 years. A cold dread filled Maggie's stomach. The charity foundation was her project. She had started it, managed it, and planned every single fundraiser. Her name was on all the official papers. Detective, she asked, does this mean I am being investigated too? Right now, we are just trying to get information. But, Mrs. Reynolds, I have to ask, did you know anything about this money being moved? Absolutely not, Maggie answered instantly and firmly. I handle the daily work of the foundation, but Rick was in charge of all the finances. He always told me it was too complicated for me to worry about. As the words left her mouth, Maggie felt a surge of anger at herself. Too complicated, as if she were a child who could not possibly understand money. We will need you to come back tomorrow with a lawyer to make an official statement, Detective Walsh explained. In the meantime, I suggest you find a very good divorce attorney. And Mrs. Reynolds? Yes? I would also advise you to freeze any bank accounts you share with him and get copies of all your financial papers. Do it today. Maggie walked out of the police station feeling like she was in a dream. The world looked different now. The sunlight felt too bright, the traffic noise was deafening, and every stranger's face seemed hostile. Her phone was ringing nonstop with calls from friends, reporters, and people from work. She turned it off and got into another taxi. Where to, lady? The driver asked. She almost said home, but then she stopped herself. The penthouse was not her home anymore. It was just a beautiful cage she had been trapped in without even knowing it. Reynolds Industries, she said. Midtown. The time had come to face her millionaire ex-husband. The tall glass buildings of Midtown Manhattan shone in the sun as Maggie's taxi arrived at Reynolds Industries. The 50-story building was like a monument Rick had built for himself, with his name in gold letters on the front. Just 3 hours after that life-changing phone call, Maggie stood in the marble lobby. She could see employees whispering and pointing at her. In the business world, bad news travels very fast, and the CEO's wife showing up looking like she was ready for a fight meant something was seriously wrong. The elevator ride up to the 40th floor felt like she was going up to her own execution. Maggie watched the floor numbers go up. each one bringing her closer to a confrontation she never thought she would have. Rick's secretary, Amanda, looked up in a panic as Maggie got off the elevator. Mrs. Reynolds, Mr. Reynolds is, in a meeting. A really important meeting. Maybe you could come back later? Amanda, I have known you for 8 years. Do not lie to me, Maggie said. Her voice was calm, but there was a hard edge to it. Where is my husband? Boardroom B, Amanda whispered, unable to look her in the eye. Maggie walked down a hallway she had walked down hundreds of times before for company parties and holiday events. The walls were covered with photos of Rick shaking hands with famous politicians, celebrities, and business leaders. In many of those pictures, she was right there beside him, smiling elegantly, playing the part of the perfect corporate wife. She stopped outside the heavy doors of Boardroom B and could hear voices inside. She recognized Rick's deep voice, along with the voices of several of his top executives. The most important thing is that we have to control this story, Rick was saying. I do not care how much it costs. Pay off anyone who needs to be paid off, and threaten anyone who needs to be threatened. Another voice said, Rick, the pictures are already all over the internet. And what about the police investigation? Let me handle the police, Rick replied. I have given them enough money over the years. They will cooperate. Maggie pushed the doors open without knocking. 7 men in expensive suits turned and stared at her in shock. Rick was at the head of the conference table. His silver hair was perfectly in place, and his Armani suit was flawless. He looked like the powerful CEO he was until you looked into his eyes. Gentlemen, Rick said after a long, awkward pause, could you please give my wife and me a moment alone? The executives practically scurried from the room like embarrassed kids, not a single one daring to look at Maggie. Once the door clicked shut, the silence was so heavy it felt like you could touch it. Maggie, Rick started, using the slow, careful voice he reserved for explaining things to people he thought were simple. I know what this must seem like. Let's get straight to the point, Rick, she said, turning his favorite phrase against him like a weapon. How long? How long what? Do not treat me like I am a fool. How long have you been sleeping with Sophia Blake? Rick reached up and adjusted his tie. It was a nervous tell he had whenever he felt trapped. Maggie, this is a very complicated situation. You cannot possibly understand the kind of pressure I am under or the demands of running a corporation of this scale. How long? The question was a sharp, dangerous thing hanging in the air between them. Rick turned his back on her and walked over to the giant windows that looked out over the city. 8 months, he finally admitted. 8 months. So, while Maggie was busy planning charity events and hosting his business dinners, while she was being the flawless wife, he was starting an entirely new life without her. And what about the embezzlement? Rick spun back around, his face turning a deep shade of red. That is not embezzlement. That money has always been mine. I built this company from the ground up. I started that foundation. Maggie cut in, her voice finally rising. I was the one who wrote its mission statement. I was the one who organized every single event. I personally brought in every last donor. And you have been stealing from it. I have not been stealing anything. I have been reallocating assets to keep them safe from any potential lawsuits. It is a strategy called financial planning, Maggie, but the details are far too complex for you to understand. Stop. The word shot out of her, as sharp as the crack of a whip. Stop talking down to me like I am some kind of idiot, Richard. I may not have a fancy business degree, but I am not stupid. For a split second, a look of something that might have been regret flashed across Rick's face, but it vanished so quickly that Maggie thought she might have imagined it. Maggie, sit down. Let us talk about this like two rational adults. I am talking about it like an adult. You are the one who has been behaving like a spoiled teenager with a brand new credit card. She stayed on her feet, her knuckles white as she gripped the back of a leather chair. Tell me about Sophia. What about her? Is she pregnant? The silence stretched on, thick and uncomfortable. Rick's jaw clenched, and Maggie knew the answer before he even said a word. Yes. The single word struck her with the force of a physical punch. For 22 years of marriage, they had never been able to have children. It certainly was not because they did not try. They had poured a fortune into fertility doctors and endured endless years of tests and painful procedures and crushing disappointments. Rick had always insisted it did not matter, that their life together was perfect even without children. But it seemed it only did not matter when the children would have been with Maggie. How far along is she? 4 months. 4 months. Maggie quickly did the calculation in her head. Sophia Blake had become pregnant right around the time of Rick's 50th birthday party, the huge, elaborate party that Maggie had spent 3 long months planning for him. I want a divorce, Rick said abruptly, the words tumbling out of his mouth. Maggie, I am asking for a divorce. Sophia is pregnant, and I intend to marry her. And there it was. Her entire 22-year marriage was erased in just 2 sentences. I see. Maggie's voice was completely steady, but on the inside, she felt a deep crack form as the very last piece of her old life crumbled into dust. And you figured you would make this easier on me by stealing millions of dollars first? I have not stolen a single thing, Rick snapped back. Everything I have done is perfectly legal. And to be honest, Maggie, you ought to be grateful. Do you really think you would have any of this if it were not for me? He waved his hand around the luxurious boardroom. At the penthouse, the designer clothes, their entire lifestyle. You were a nobody when I met you. Just a secretary working in a law office. A paralegal, Maggie corrected him softly. Whatever. The point is that I made you who you are. I gave you a life that you could never have even dreamed of on your own. And now you are going to act like you have the right to tear down everything I have built just because I happened to fall in love with someone else. His words were like venom because they had just enough truth in them to really hurt. Maggie had been a paralegal when they first met, working long hours for very little pay and sharing a tiny studio apartment with a roommate. Rick had whisked her away into a world of wealth and privilege she had never known. But she had earned her spot in that world. She had been the ideal corporate wife, a charming hostess, and a dedicated charity organizer. She had pushed aside her own dreams for his and had wrapped her own identity entirely in his success. And now he was brushing all of that away as if she had been nothing more than a pretty, expensive object. You are right about one thing, Rick, she said at last. I might have been a nobody when you met me, but I am not a nobody now. What is that supposed to mean? It means you are about to learn exactly who the woman you have been married to for 22 years really is. She started walking towards the door, but then she paused. Oh, and Rick, you should probably give your attorney a call, because I'm about to call mine. She walked out of that boardroom with her head held high, leaving Rick standing all alone in the middle of the scattered paperwork of his collapsing empire. As the elevator descended, Maggie felt something she had not felt in many years. Freedom. It was terrifying, but it was also thrilling. Her phone showed 17 missed calls. She ignored every single one of them, except for a text from Janet Cooper, her best friend from college. It said, I saw the news. I am coming over with wine, tissues, and my lawyer's phone number. For the first time In what felt like forever, Maggie smiled. Later that evening, Maggie was sitting in Janet Cooper's brownstone in Brooklyn, comforted by the normal sounds of a family. She could hear teenagers arguing upstairs, a dog barking in the backyard, and the wonderful smell of something cooking in the kitchen. "Honey, listen to me," Janet said as she poured 2 very large glasses of red wine. Men like Rick never change. Their bad habits just get more expensive. Janet was the complete opposite of Maggie. She was loud, had strong opinions, and was totally confident in who she was. They had been roommates in college and had stayed best friends through 2 decades of completely different lives. While Maggie had married a rich man, Janet had married for love and created a messy, wonderful family with her husband, who was an architect. "I just keep thinking that I should have known this was happening," Maggie said, taking the glass of wine with gratitude. All of those nights, he said he was late at the office, and all the business trips that kept popping up over the last year. "Oh, stop it. The only thing you should have expected was a line of women trying to get with your rich husband, honey. You trusted him. That is what wives are supposed to do." Janet got comfortable in her favorite armchair, a beat-up piece of furniture that Rick would have hated. "The real question is, what are you going to do about it now? I have no idea. Today, when I stood up to him, I felt like a different person. But now," Maggie waved her hands around, feeling lost. "Who am I without him? I do not have a career. I do not have any of my own money." "Stop that right now," Janet said, her voice suddenly sharp. "You have been successfully running a multi-million-dollar charitable foundation for the last 10 years. You have organized fundraisers that brought in more money than some small countries make in an entire year. You can speak 3 languages, you have a master's degree, and you are one of the most intelligent people I have ever met. Do not you dare let some self-obsessed ex-husband make you feel like you are small." Maggie could feel tears starting to form in her eyes. "I just feel so stupid, Janet. 22 years, and I never had a clue. That does not mean you are stupid. It means you are a trusting person. There is a very big difference." Janet leaned closer. "So, what did your lawyer have to say?" "I have not actually called one yet." "What?" "Maggie, you have to protect yourself, especially if Rick has been moving money around." I know. I promise I will call someone tomorrow." Maggie put her wine glass down on the table. "First, I need to go back home and grab some of my things. Important documents, my jewelry, anything I do not want to risk losing when we settle the divorce." "Do you want me to go with you?" "No. This is something I have to do by myself." An hour later, Maggie was standing in her penthouse apartment for what she knew would be the last time. The whole place felt different to her now, almost like she was looking at a museum display titled "How the Rich Live" from the year 2025. The fresh flowers that Rick had delivered every week, the expensive art they had bought together, the framed pictures from their supposedly perfect life, it all felt like it belonged to someone else. She walked into Rick's study, a very masculine room with dark wood and leather furniture where he handled his most secret business deals. She had always been allowed in there, but she rarely ever stayed for long. It had always been Rick's private space. But now she looked around it with a new perspective, searching for his secrets. His desk was clean. There was nothing there. Rick was much too smart to leave any clues just lying around. But she knew there was a safe hidden behind a section of fake books on the bookshelf. And Maggie knew the combination because Rick had never thought to change it from their wedding anniversary, 05182003. The safe was much bigger than she remembered, and it was stuffed with papers she had never seen before. There were stock certificates, deeds to properties, and insurance policies. It was the entire paper history of their life together, all perfectly arranged in Rick's obsessive, neat way. And at the very bottom of the stack of papers, she found something that made her whole body start to shake. Adoption papers that had her name on them. Margaret Sarah Harrison, born on May 18th, 1978, adopted by James and Linda Morrison on September 3rd, 1978. Maggie just stared at the document, her head spinning. She had known her whole life that she was adopted. The Morrisons had told her as soon as she was old enough to understand, but she had never been told her birth name or anything at all about her biological parents. The papers said her birth father was a man named William Harrison from Dallas, Texas. His age at the time of her birth was 25. His occupation was listed as oil industry. In the margin, there was a phone number written by hand with a note in Rick's neat writing that said, "For emergency contact only." Maggie's hands trembled as she took out her phone and typed William Harrison Dallas Oil into Google. The search results that appeared on the screen made her collapse into Rick's big leather chair. William Harrison was not just a guy in the oil industry, he was the oil industry in Texas. Harrison Petroleum stood as one of the biggest private oil companies in the nation, with a value estimated at $8 billion. According to her research, its founder, William Harrison, had been looking for his daughter for more than 40 years. "Well, I'll be," Maggie murmured, using a phrase her adoptive dad always used when something took him by surprise. She took photos of every single document inside the safe before placing them all back in their exact original positions. However, she held on to the adoption paperwork and the phone number. Making a final pass through the penthouse, Maggie grabbed a small suitcase and filled it with her essential belongings. Just as she shut the bedroom closet door, her phone vibrated with a message from a number she did not recognize. It read, "I saw the news about your husband. If you want the real story about what he has been up to, meet me at Cafe Luna tomorrow at 10 a.m. Come by yourself." Maggie just stared at the text for a long moment before she deleted it. She had dealt with enough truth for one day. But as she walked out of the penthouse, she felt a deep, fundamental shift inside her. For the first time in 22 years, she was no longer Richard Reynolds' wife. She was the daughter of Margaret Harrison. A fact that could change her entire world. When she got back to Janet's place, she laid the adoption papers out for her friend. "Holy crap, Maggie," Janet said, her eyes wide as she looked at the papers. "Do you have any idea what this means?" "It means I could have a family I never even knew existed. It means you might have 8 billion reasons to stop worrying about whatever settlement Rick offers." Maggie glanced at the phone number one more time. The next day she would face a choice. Call a total stranger who could be her father, or she could keep trying to piece together a life that was already shattered. But that night, for the first time in what felt like an eternity, she felt a glimmer of something that resembled hope. Perhaps this discovery changed absolutely everything. The following morning was filled with the roar of a private jet's engines preparing for takeoff on a JFK runway. At the crack of dawn, Maggie had made the call to Texas, her hands trembling as she dialed the number she had found in Rick's safe. A woman with a distinctly southern voice answered, "Harrison Residence. This is Margaret Reynolds. I am trying to reach William Harrison. I have reason to believe he might be my father." The silence that followed was so long, Maggie was sure the connection had been lost. Then, a deep, authoritative man's voice came through from the background, saying, "Give me the phone." "Margaret?" The voice was precisely as she had pictured it. A Texas accent made gentle by time and emotion. "Is that really you, little girl?" That simple term of endearment made something inside her break. "I think it is. I found adoption papers that name you as my biological father. Now you listen to me, young lady. I have spent 47 years searching for you. Where are you right now? I am in New York. I am sending my jet for you. Do not go anywhere until I arrive." That conversation had happened 6 hours earlier. Now Maggie was seated in the plush cabin of a Gulfstream jet, watching the American countryside glide by from 40,000 feet below. She had never been on a private flight. Rick always saw it as a pointless luxury, and the sheer, quiet opulence felt unreal. The flight attendant, a woman close to Maggie's age with warm, kind eyes, served her coffee in a real china cup. "Mr. Harrison is incredibly excited to meet you," she said with a soft smile. "He has carried a baby picture of you in his wallet for longer than I have worked for him." "And how long is that?" 23 years. In all of that time, I have never seen him look as purely happy as he did this morning when he learned you were finally coming home." Home. The word sounded foreign to her. Maggie never considered Texas her home. She was born there, yes, but she grew up in upstate New York with the Morrisons, wonderful people who had provided her a secure, middle-class life. They had passed away in a car crash 10 years prior, which left her with no one but Rick. As the plane started its descent into Dallas, Maggie leaned her head against the window. The city stretched out to the horizon in every direction, a testament to oil wealth and Texan ambition. "Is this your first visit to Dallas?" the flight attendant inquired. "It's my first time back," Maggie clarified. The Harrison Ranch was located 40 minutes from the city, down a private road that wound for miles through rolling hills dotted with oil derricks. Maggie rode in the back of a black Range Rover, observing a landscape that should have felt familiar, but instead seemed like a completely different world. When the main house finally appeared, it was nothing like she had imagined. It was not some flashy, ostentatious mansion, but a beautifully sprawling ranch house made of natural stone and aged wood, designed to harmonize with its surroundings instead of overpowering them. A man stood waiting on the front porch. According to the adoption records, William Harrison was 72 years old, but he moved with his energy of a man much younger, standing tall and broad with a full head of silver hair and piercing blue eyes. He gave off an aura of confidence that could only be earned from a lifetime of great success. Yet, the moment Maggie got out of the car, all of that self-assurance seemed to evaporate. "My God," he breathed, walking slowly down the porch steps to meet her. "You are the spitting image of your mother." They just stood there, facing one another under the bright Texas sun, a father and his daughter, seeing each other for the first time in 47 years. "I cannot remember her," Maggie said softly. "She was the most beautiful woman I have ever known, and the kindest soul," William said, his voice thick with emotion. "She died when you were only 6 months old, in a car accident on a stormy night, just like the one that took your adoptive parents. It seems some families are just plagued by tragedy." "Why did you give me away?" The question hung in the air between them, sharp as a blade. William pointed to the chairs on the porch. "Sit with me, and I will tell you everything." They found their places in cozy rocking chairs that looked out over the ranch. Far off, horses could be seen grazing in lush, green fields. "I was 25 when you were born," William started, his voice falling into a rhythm like a man telling a tale he had practiced in his mind for many years. "I was young, foolish, and completely terrified of being a father. Your mother's name was Sarah. She was only 22 years old. We were not married, which was a much bigger scandal back then than it is today." He paused, looking out toward the distant horizon. "When she passed away, I fell to pieces. I started drinking, I stopped going to work, and I nearly lost the entire business my father had built. My own father sat me down and said I had two paths to choose. I could get my act together and raise you the right way, or I could give you to a family that could give you the love you deserved while I got my own life sorted out. And you chose the family. I chose what I believed was the best thing for you. The Morrisons were good people, Sarah's cousin and her husband. They were unable to have children of their own, and they made a promise to love you as if you were their own daughter. William's voice cracked a little. I kept telling myself that I would come and get you when I was ready to be the father you truly needed, but you never did. I tried. Believe me, I really tried. But every single time I got close, every time I paid another detective or followed up on another lead, the trail would go cold. The adoption was sealed, official records disappeared, and the Morrisons moved and took a different name. By the time I was finally able to track you down, you were 25 years old and already married to that viper you call a husband. A sudden flash of defensiveness rose in Maggie, even though she was just as angry with Rick. You have been watching me. I have been trying to look out for you, William stated with conviction. Did you honestly think it was just a coincidence that your husband's business landed so many lucrative oil deals over the years? Do you truly believe he built that empire of his all on his own? The truth of his words crashed down on Maggie. You were helping Rick, I was helping you. Every deal he closed meant a better life for you. Every single contract I steered his way was my attempt to provide for the daughter that I could not be with. Maggie jumped to her feet and began pacing the porch. So, you have been pulling the strings of my entire life, and I never even knew. I was loving you in the only way I knew how, William replied, his voice firm but filled with sorrow. And now that snake is tossing you aside for some young actress after everything I did for him. He does not know, does he, that you are my father? He doesn't have a clue, but he is about to. William's tone grew sharp and cold. That boy actually believes he can steal from you, disgrace you, and just walk away without any consequences. He is about to get a hard lesson in what happens when someone double-crosses a Harrison. Maggie spun around to face him. What are you talking about? Before William could elaborate, Maggie's phone began to ring. The screen showed the name David Martinez, who was Rick's attorney. Mrs. Reynolds, David said, his voice strictly professional. I feel it is my professional duty to inform you that your husband officially filed for divorce this morning. He is also moving to freeze all your joint assets and is arguing that you have no legal claim to any part of his business. Maggie felt all the color drain from her face. Is he allowed to do that? He is certainly going to try, Mrs. Reynolds. But I have to tell you something else. There are also criminal charges being brought against you. The district attorney's office has reason to believe you were involved in the embezzlement from the charitable foundation. That is ridiculous. I had absolutely nothing to do with that. I know that, and you know that, but the evidence they have is starting to point directly at you. I am afraid your husband is framing you to take the blame for his own crimes. The phone suddenly felt like it weighed a ton in Maggie's hand. What do I do? You need to hire the best criminal defense lawyer you can find, and you need to do it immediately. Maggie ended the call and looked up at William, who had heard every single word. Now you listen to me, young lady, he said, his voice filled with determination. William stood up slowly, his movements deliberate, as a powerful decision settled within him. That snake really thinks he can ruin my daughter and just walk away. He has no idea he just made the last and biggest mistake of his life. What are you planning to do? William's smile was grim, and for the very first time, Maggie saw the same iron will in him that she had in herself. Sweetheart, you are about to witness what true power actually looks like. At the same time, back in Manhattan, the news was exploding on every station across the city. This is Channel 7 News, reporting at noon. I am live outside Reynolds Industries, where our sources indicate that the divorce between Chief Executive Officer Richard Reynolds and his wife, Margaret, has taken a shocking new direction. Federal authorities are now looking into claims of embezzlement from the Reynolds Family Foundation, a charity that has collected over $50 million for children's charities in the last 10 years. The reporter, a woman with sharp eyes and a red business suit, was standing before the massive glass towers of the city's heart. A stream of employees walked by behind her as she spoke. What makes this situation so stunning is that Mrs. Reynolds, the very person who established and ran the charity, is now under investigation as a possible partner in the theft of money intended for children in need. In the meantime, her husband has very openly started a new relationship with the actress Sophia Blake, who is said to be carrying his child. Inside her brownstone home in Brooklyn, Janet Cooper was busy answering phone calls, her anger growing with each one. "No comment, you parasites," she yelled into the phone, before slamming it down on the third journalist to call in just 10 minutes. These people are like sharks that have smelled blood in the water. Her daughter Emma, a teenager, came into the kitchen with a worried look on her face. "Mom, why are there news trucks parked on our street?" "Because some people are fools who believe they can destroy another person's life for their own amusement," Janet answered, pouring an especially large amount of coffee into her mug. The phone started ringing again. Janet looked at the number on the screen, and her angry expression softened. "Maggie, thank heavens." "Where are you right now?" "I am in Texas." Maggie's voice was crisp and clear, despite the long distance. "Janet, they are attempting to frame me for the money Rick stole. I know, sweetie. It is being reported all over the news. But Maggie, there is something more that you have to know. I have been receiving calls from reporters since this morning, and they are investigating everything about you, your past, your adoptive family, and even your time in college. What are they discovering? Nothing terrible, but they are raising questions about how a paralegal managed to marry a millionaire. They are attempting to make you look like some sort of fortune hunter." From the other end of the phone line, Maggie felt that old, familiar anger rising inside her. "Let them investigate. They are about to discover that I am not nearly as weak as they believe. What is that supposed to mean? It means I am no longer just Richard Reynolds' discarded wife. I am William Harrison's daughter." Janet almost let the phone fall from her hand. "The famous oil tycoon? Maggie, are you being serious?" "I am completely serious." "And Janet, Rick is about to learn that he chose the absolute worst woman to challenge." While Maggie was in Texas, learning about her real family, the media frenzy back in New York had grown into a full-blown hurricane. Outside the Park Avenue luxury apartment, journalists had established a small, ongoing camp, with all of their cameras aimed at the building's grand entryway. Rick had locked himself away in his office, turning down all calls and lashing out at anyone who dared to come near him. The pressure was starting to show. His normally perfect hair was a mess, his necktie was crooked, and he had deep, dark circles under his eyes. "Sir," Amanda said as she knocked softly on his office door, "Miss Blake is waiting to see you." "Let her in," Rick ordered, without lifting his eyes from the legal papers spread all over his desk. Sophia Blake entered the room with the dramatic flair of an actress making her grand entrance. Even 4 months pregnant, she was breathtaking, with her golden hair and striking figure, dressed in a designer outfit that likely cost more than what most people earned in a month. "Darling," she said in a soft voice, taking a seat in the chair opposite his desk, "you look absolutely awful." "It has been a very challenging day," Rick answered sharply. "The press will not give us a moment of peace. My attorneys are informing me that the criminal probe is much more serious than we initially believed, and Maggie has, apparently, vanished." "Vanished? What do you mean she vanished?" "I mean that she is not picking up her phone, she is not at her friend's house in Brooklyn, and the security team at the penthouse reports she has not returned since yesterday." Rick finally looked up at Sophia. This is not unfolding the way I planned. Sophia casually inspected her perfectly shaped fingernails. Sweetheart, I warned you that abandoning your wife during a criminal investigation was poor timing. You should have waited until these legal issues were settled. I could not wait. You're pregnant with our child. The press had already discovered our relationship, and I had to control the narrative, Rick explained, rubbing his temples. Anyway, what is Maggie gonna do? She is just a housewife without any of her own money or any connections other than the ones I provided her. Perhaps, but a desperate housewife can be a very dangerous woman, my dear, especially one who knows where all your secrets are hidden. Rick's phone vibrated with a new text message from a number he did not recognize. He read it, and his blood pressure shot up instantly. Your husband does not realize the full extent of what he has done. If you want to help him before it is too late, meet me at Cafe Luna at 8 o'clock tonight, a friend of Maggie's. What is that? Sophia inquired, noticing the change in his face. It is nothing, just more journalists trying to get a comment. Rick deleted the text, but a strange feeling about it lingered. Who would say they were Maggie's friend and also offer to help him? On the other side of town, the person who sent that mysterious text was in a different office, making a completely different phone call. Mr. Harrison? This is David Martinez, Mrs. Reynolds' attorney. I believe it is time for us to talk about your daughter's circumstances. William Harrison's voice boomed through the phone like a powerful winter gale. Mr. Martinez, I have been expecting someone to contact me. Exactly how much danger is my little girl in? More than she currently knows, sir. Her husband has been extremely careful in creating a situation where she will take the blame for his illegal activities. However, with your resources combined with my knowledge of this case, I am confident we can reverse the situation on him. What do you need from me? For the time being, I just need you to be patient. Mrs. Reynolds has to come back to New York to confront this situation directly. But when she arrives, I want to be certain that she possesses every possible advantage we can provide her. Money is not an issue. This is not about money, Mr. Harrison. This is about power. And your daughter is about to find out that she possesses more of both than she ever knew. As the evening sun dipped below the Manhattan skyline, the components of a much larger strategy were beginning to align. Rick was convinced he had all the winning cards, but he was about to learn that other players had been in this game for much longer than he had been. And tomorrow, with Maggie's return to New York, the true fight was set to start. The very next Monday, Maggie entered the most exclusive law firm in all of Manhattan. The sound of her heels clicking with assurance on marble floors that were more impressive than anything in Rick's entire building. The private jet had flown her back to New York earlier that morning, but she was arriving as an entirely new person. The one who had run away in a state of shock just a few days earlier was gone. The offices of Whitman, Sterling, and Associates took up a full floor of a skyscraper on Park Avenue, and their waiting area was adorned with original paintings and leather seating that spoke of immense wealth and established power. Mrs. Reynolds, a receptionist with a formal British accent, greeted her with a smile. Mr. Whitman is prepared for your meeting now. Charles Whitman was precisely the man Maggie had envisioned, around 70 years old, with silver hair and dressed in a suit that was likely more expensive than a typical person's car. Yet, his handshake was strong, and his eyes were incredibly sharp and intelligent. Mrs. Reynolds, please have a seat. I have been looking over the details of your case with considerable interest. His office had a view of Central Park through windows that stretched from the floor to the ceiling, filling the room with bright sunlight. The walls were lined with law books, and diplomas from Harvard and Yale were displayed in modest frames. Mr. Whitman, I have to know exactly what it is I am up against, Maggie stated. as she sat down in a leather chair that was probably worth more than her first automobile. "Let me be very clear, Mrs. Reynolds. Your husband has set up a complex financial scheme to steal millions of dollars from your charity foundation, all while making it look like you were the one who planned it all." Whitman opened a large file. "He has been funneling funds through accounts overseas, fabricating documents, and getting ready to assert that you were the person who had both the access and the reason to do it. But that is not what happened. Of course, it is not what happened, but the false proof he has assembled is extremely persuasive. He has been organizing this for a minimum of 2 years, Mrs. Reynolds. This was not an impulsive act, but a carefully planned scheme to ruin you both, financially and legally, while ensuring he remained safe." Maggie felt a cold dread settle deep in her stomach. How much money are we actually discussing? Somewhere around $12 million over a period of 3 years. That figure seemed to hang in the space between them like a guilty verdict. $12 million, an amount that could put her in prison for the rest of her days. However, Whitman went on, and a slight change in his voice caused Maggie to look at him with sudden attention. "There have been some fascinating new developments that significantly alter the circumstances." "Really? What sort of developments?" "Well, to begin with, let us talk about your prenuptial agreement. You did sign one, did you not?" "Yes, but Rick's legal team drafted it. It essentially states that I receive nothing if we get divorced. In a normal situation, that would be the case. However, a special clause in the contract makes the entire agreement invalid if your husband is involved in adultery or any criminal acts. Seeing as Mr. Reynolds is guilty on both counts, that prenup is now worthless paper." Maggie felt a glimmer of hope. "So, that means I am entitled to half of his assets?" "Actually, Mrs. Reynolds, you are entitled to much more than half." A smile spread across Whitman's face, the kind a shark gives when it smells blood in the water. "You see, there is a detail about your own financial standing that your husband knows nothing about. I do not have a financial standing. Everything is under his name. Mrs. Reynolds, do you know the company Harrison Petroleum?" The question came out of nowhere. "I know it is a big oil company in Texas." "Why do you ask?" "Because, Mrs. Reynolds, you have owned 12% of that company since your 21st birthday." The statement struck her with the force of a physical impact. "That is not possible. For over 25 years, your birth father, William Harrison, has been transferring stock into your name. He established a trust that came into effect on your 21st birthday, but all the paperwork was sealed until you gave your consent to accept it." Whitman produced another stack of documents. "These stock certificates have been held in an escrow account, just waiting for you to formally recognize yourself as his daughter." Maggie gazed at the documents, her mind struggling to process the figures. "What is 12% of Harrison Petroleum worth?" At its current valuation, it is worth about $200 million. The world around her felt like it was tilting on its axis. $200 million. For the past 2 days, she had believed she was penniless and on the verge of facing criminal charges. Now this attorney was informing her that she possessed a fortune so vast she could not even imagine it. "Well, I will be," she murmured, repeating a favorite saying of the man who raised her. "But there is more, Mrs. Reynolds. Your father has also kept detailed files on every business arrangement he made possible for your husband over the years. This includes every oil deal, every beneficial contract, and every secret maneuver that helped shape Reynolds Industries into the giant it is now. He kept precise records, even recordings of talks where your husband admitted his achievements were thanks to Mr. Harrison's connections." Whitman leaned in closer. "Mrs. Reynolds, your father constructed your husband's entire business empire as a way to take care of you. And now that your husband has turned on you, Mr. Harrison is ready to dismantle everything he helped put together. Maggie got up and went to the window, gazing down at the city she had called home for more than 20 years. From this height, everything seemed altered, tinier, and somehow easier to handle. Mrs. Reynolds, Whitman said softly, a lot of women in your position feel it is too late to begin a new life after a marriage fails. They feel they are too old, too accustomed to their routines, too reliant on the life they have made. But you are about to demonstrate just how mistaken that belief is. She turned around to look at him. What is the first step? First, we will file for divorce and ask for immediate injunctions that will freeze all your husband's financial accounts while the embezzlement accusations are investigated. Second, we will provide proof that you were tricked and misled by your husband, positioning you as a victim, not a partner in crime. Third, we will disclose your actual financial status, signaling that you have the means to continue this fight indefinitely. And fourth, Whitman's smile was that of a hunter. Fourth, we will ruin your husband so thoroughly that he will regret for the rest of his days ever crossing the Harrison family. Maggie felt a change deep within her, a new, unyielding resolve she never knew she had. Mr. Whitman, I just have one question, yes? How soon can we start? Does tomorrow morning work for you? Perfect. Walking out of the law firm, Maggie understood that for the very first time as an adult, she was the one in control. Rick believed they were in a chess match where he was the king. He was about to discover she was playing an entirely different game, one he could never win. Later that night, Maggie stood in the penthouse, aware it was for the final time, hearing the city's hum far below. The apartment that once felt like a royal suite now felt more like a gallery, stunning, costly, and utterly lacking in real warmth. Her friend, Janet, was helping her pack, gently cushioning the small number of personal belongings Maggie chose to take. I just cannot get over it, Janet remarked, setting a frame picture of Maggie's adoptive parents into a cushioned box. $200 million, sweetie. Do you have any idea you are wealthier than some entire countries? It has not sunk in yet, Maggie confessed, glancing around the master bedroom one last time. Just 24 hours ago, I was convinced I was about to lose it all. And now, it turns out I did not need Rick's wealth at all. That must hurt him a little. What really hurts is knowing my father was looking out for me my whole adult life, and I was completely unaware. Maggie lifted a jewelry box from the vanity. For all this time, I believed Rick was some kind of business genius, but he was really just benefiting from my father's kindness. Honey, I am telling you, Janet said, with her go-to expression. Karma has a truly twisted sense of humor. Your egomaniac ex-husband chose the absolute wrong woman to double-cross. Maggie's phone buzzed, and the screen displayed William Harrison's name. Hello, Daddy, she answered, the words still feeling unfamiliar in her mouth. How are you doing, kiddo? I am doing better than I thought I would be. Charles Whitman laid it all out for me today. Charlie is a good man. He has been my attorney for 30 years. William's tone was kind but firm. Are you prepared for the next step? I believe I am, but I have to ask you a question. Ask away. Why did you not tell me the truth a long time ago? Why did you let me remain married to Rick, knowing the kind of person he truly was? A long pause followed, making Maggie wonder if they had been disconnected. Because I was a coward, William finally admitted. I worried that if I reached out, you would turn me away. I was worried you would believe I was attempting to buy your affection after leaving you when you were an infant. So I told myself that supporting you from afar was good enough. And now I see that I have squandered 47 years in fear when I could have been building a relationship with my daughter. I do not want to lose another minute. Tears welled up in Maggie's eyes. I do not either. Good, because tomorrow we will teach that snake what happens when you cross a Harrison woman. After ending the call, Maggie began making a series of calculated phone calls. Her first call was to the society journalist from the New York Post, who had been trying to get in touch with her for days. This is Margaret Reynolds. I believe you have been trying to call me, Mrs. Reynolds. Thanks for getting back to me. We are very interested in hearing your perspective on your husband's affair and the fraud allegations. I will give you an exclusive, Maggie cut in, on the condition that you print precisely what I tell you, and you print it exactly when I say so. Well, that is not typically how we operate. Would you prefer the scoop of the year, or do you want to continue pursuing dead-end leads that will be irrelevant by this time next week? There was a brief silence. What sort of scoop are we discussing? The kind that destroys careers and launches new ones. Are you in? I am very much in. Excellent. I will phone you tomorrow night with all the information. Her next call went to the event coordinator who arranged the foundation's charity events. Caroline, this is Maggie Reynolds. I need your help setting up an event for tomorrow evening. Maggie, I was so sorry to hear about the divorce. Are you okay? I am more than okay. I need you to arrange a small get-together for about 50 people, our usual guest list, but please ensure Richard and Sophia Blake receive invitations. Are you positive that is a good idea, considering the current situation? Caroline, I need you to trust me. Also, be sure to let everyone know I will be making a significant announcement regarding the Foundation's future. Her last call was to David Martinez, Rick's attorney, who had also been attempting to contact her. Mr. Martinez, this is Margaret Reynolds. I believe you wanted to speak with me. Mrs. Reynolds, thank you for returning my call. I was hoping to talk about a potential plea deal concerning the embezzlement allegations. I have no interest in a plea deal. Mrs. Reynolds, I would urge you to think about your choices very carefully. The case against you is strong, and the district attorney is proposing a rather lenient arrangement. Mr. Martinez, allow me to save us both some trouble. I will not be pleading guilty to offenses I did not commit just to shield my husband from the fallout of his own actions. Mrs. Reynolds, I do not believe you grasp how serious this is for you. I grasp it completely. The question is, do you grasp how serious it is for you? I am sorry, I do not understand what you mean. You will find out tomorrow. Good night, Mr. Martinez. Just as Maggie was finishing up with her personal things, her phone vibrated with a text from Rick. Maggie, we have to talk. This has all gone way too far. Please call me. She looked at his text for a while before replying, You are right, Richard. This has gone too far. We can talk tomorrow at the plaza. Be there by yourself. His reply was instant. What is happening at the plaza? Your day of reckoning. Janet glanced up from the box she was filling. Are you certain you are prepared for all this? Janet, for 22 years, I played the part of the ideal executive's wife. I was always courteous, encouraging, and agreeable. I allowed people to think less of me because it was simpler than standing up for myself. Maggie taped the final box shut and surveyed the now empty penthouse. But that woman no longer exists. And tomorrow, everyone will finally meet the real Margaret Harrison. I just love that name. I do too. As they stepped out of the penthouse, Maggie felt a wave of relief she had not anticipated. She was not just ending a marriage. She was shedding an old version of herself, a woman who had played small, to fit into a life that was never meant for her. In a few hours, at the Plaza Hotel, Richard Reynolds would learn he had made the single greatest mistake of his life, and Maggie was going to savor every single second of his realization. The grand ballroom of the Plaza Hotel was humming with the conversation of New York's most powerful people. You could hear the clinking of crystal glasses and the sound of a live orchestra in the air. Caroline had truly worked magic on such short notice. The room was filled with white orchids and bathed in golden light. This created a feeling of sophisticated intimacy that spoke of deep-rooted wealth and even deeper secrets. Maggie stood inside the private elevator that opened into the ballroom. She wore a navy blue Valentino gown that cost $15,000. It was money she spent with delight from her newfound Harrison Petroleum account. Her hair was swept up in a sophisticated style, and she wore a pair of diamond earrings that had belonged to her birth mother. They were a gift from William that morning. "You look stunning, little girl," William said as he adjusted his black tie. At 72 years old, he still cut a powerful figure. His silver hair was perfectly in place, and his tuxedo was flawless. "Your mother would have been so proud." "Are you certain this is the best way to handle this?" Maggie asked, a flutter of nerves in her stomach. "Perhaps we should have just allowed the lawyers to manage everything." "My dear, men like your husband only understand one language," William replied. "Public humiliation. He attempted to ruin you in the most public way he could. So, we are simply going to do the same for him." William's smile was razor-sharp. "Besides, is it not time for New York society to meet the real Margaret Harrison?" The elevator doors slid open, and they walked into the ballroom together. The impact was instant and powerful. Conversations paused in the middle of a word. Heads turned to get a better look at Maggie and the distinguished older gentleman at her side. She had been to hundreds of these events over the years. She was always known as Richard Reynolds' wife, hidden in his shadow. Tonight, she was the one everyone was looking at. "Is that Margaret Reynolds?" she overheard someone whisper. "Who is that man with her? She looks different. She looks powerful." Maggie moved through the room with her head held high. She accepted polite kisses on the cheek and greetings from people who had been ignoring her calls for days. It is truly remarkable how fast people's attitudes shift when you show up with clear wealth and influence. "Margaret, my dear," Caroline said as she hurried over. Her event planner smile looked a little tight. "You look absolutely incredible, and this must be your guest. Caroline, I would like you to meet my father, William Harrison." If Caroline knew the name, her professional training kept her from reacting. But Maggie saw her eyes widen just a little. "It is wonderful to meet you, Mr. Harrison," she said. "Margaret has told us so much about you." "Actually," Maggie said with a small smile, "I have only known him for a few days. We have a great deal of catching up to do." On the other side of the ballroom, she saw Rick standing by the bar with Sophia Blake. Even from that distance, she could see his confusion turn into alarm as he watched her command the attention of the room. She moved with a confidence and grace he had never witnessed in her before. Sophia looked gorgeous in a red gown that highlighted her pregnancy. Her blonde hair was styled in perfect, flowing waves. She looked every bit the movie star that Maggie knew she was. "Shall we go and greet your husband?" William asked, offering her his arm. "My ex-husband," Maggie corrected him. "And yes, let us go." They made their way across the ballroom like a ship parting the sea. The crowd seemed to move out of their way. Rick's face became paler with every step they took. "Richard," Maggie said as they arrived at the bar, "you seem surprised to see me." "Maggie," Rick's voice was strained, thick with tension he was trying to hide. "I did not think you would show up tonight. But then again, you always stress the importance of keeping up appearances." She then turned to Sophia, her smile never quite reaching her eyes. "And you must be Sophia. My congratulations on your pregnancy." Sophia raised her chin in defiance. "Thank you, darling. Richard and I are incredibly happy." "I am sure you are." Maggie's voice was smooth and even. "Richard, I would like to introduce you to my father, William Harrison." All the color instantly vanished from Rick's face. "Your father? That is right, son," William said. His Texas accent was thicker than usual. I am Margaret's father, the one who has been quietly looking out for her for the last 22 years. The wine glass fell from Rick's hand and shattered against the marble floor. You are William Harrison, from Harrison Petroleum. I certainly am. And you are the lowlife who has been stealing from my little girl. The conversation around them was now attracting notice. Other guests started to move in closer, sensing a dramatic scene was about to unfold. I do not know what you think you are talking about, Rick started to say, but his usual commanding tone was gone. I know everything, boy. Every single contract I sent your way, every deal I helped arrange, every favor I used to help you build your so-called empire. William's voice was quiet, but it carried, intended for everyone nearby to hear. I know about the $12 million you embezzled from the children's charity. I know about the fake documents you forged to frame my daughter. And I know all about your scheme to ruin her reputation just to save your own pathetic skin. That is not... I did not, Rick stammered. He looked around the room in desperation, as if searching for an exit. Darling, Sophia said, her voice a little higher than normal. Perhaps we should go now. An excellent thought, Miss Blake, Maggie said. But before you leave, I have some interesting news you might want to hear about your fiancé's business empire. We are not engaged, Sophia said sharply. Not yet, maybe. But I bet Richard promised you a beautiful life after our divorce. Is settled, and he gets his hands on all that money. Maggie smiled a sweet, dangerous smile. The only issue is, there is not going to be any money. What are you talking about? Rick demanded. I am talking about the reality that every important contract your company has had for the last 20 years was set up by my father. Every oil deal, every government project, every single piece of business that made you rich. It was all because of Harrison Petroleum's influence. The circle of guests around them grew larger, fascinated by the public explosion of New York's newest scandal. And as of this morning, William added, every last one of those contracts has been canceled. Rick's face turned from white to a sickly shade of green. You cannot do that. I can do anything I want, son. It is my oil, my contracts, and my business connections. William's smile was like a predator's. It turns out that when you betray a man's only daughter, he has a tendency to take it very personally. Ladies and gentlemen, the band leader announced, seemingly unaware of the drama happening near the bar, Mr. Richard Reynolds has requested to make an announcement. All eyes shifted to Rick, who looked like an animal trapped in the headlights of a car. Maggie knew he had probably planned to announce his engagement to Sophia tonight. He likely thought it was the ideal way to seal his victory over the wife he had thrown away. Go on, darling, Sophia whispered with urgency. Tell them about us. Rick walked slowly toward the microphone that was set up by the orchestra. His face was completely drained of color. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you all for being here tonight. I have an announcement to make about my plans for the future. He stopped, looking out at the sea of powerful faces, all of them watching him intently. Actually, Maggie said, stepping forward, I think I will be the one to make the announcement. She walked to the microphone with the assurance of a woman who had just realized she owned the entire building. Rick moved to stop her, but William's firm hand on his shoulder held him in place. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Margaret Harrison Reynolds, she started, her voice ringing with clarity throughout the ballroom. Many of you know me as Richard's wife, but tonight I would like to introduce myself as William Harrison's daughter. A murmur rushed through the room like a current of electricity. Every single person there knew the name William Harrison. For the last 22 years, I've stood beside my husband while he created what looked like a business empire. Tonight, I want to tell you the truth about how that empire was really made and what is about to happen to it now. Rick lunged for the microphone again, but this time David Martinez blocked his path. Maggie's eyes widened when she saw that Rick's own lawyer was stopping him. Mr. Martinez, she said into the microphone, would you care to tell everyone what you shared with me this afternoon? David Martinez stepped up, his professional calm completely unshaken by the chaos. Ladies and gentlemen, as of this afternoon, Mr. Richard Reynolds is under a federal indictment for embezzlement, fraud, and conspiracy. The charges are a result of his theft of over $12 million from the Reynolds Family Foundation. The ballroom exploded with noise. Cameras flashed from all directions as society photographers captured the downfall. Rick just stood there, completely frozen, as the world he had built with such care crumbled into dust around him. Furthermore, Martinez continued, Mrs. Reynolds has been completely cleared of all charges. She is now officially considered a victim of Mr. Reynolds' criminal activities. This is unbelievable, Sophia Blake said. Her acting skills finally surfaced as she understood she had to get away from the train wreck. Darling, I knew nothing about any of this. I simply cannot be involved with criminal behavior. With a final glance back, she turned and left, her red dress a vivid splash of color that vanished into the crowd. Rick watched her disappear with the hollow look of a man seeing his last chance slip away forever. Maggie's voice cut cleanly through the noise. Richard, she said, you wanted to know what happens when a man trades 22 years of marriage for a younger woman? Rick turned to her, his face a mask of defeat. You learn that you were never worthy of what you had to begin with. Just as the police arrived to escort Rick from the ballroom, Maggie stood at the microphone, savoring a feeling she had never known. The sweet satisfaction of justice, perfectly served. William stepped up to the microphone, beside his daughter, and said, Now if everyone would please listen. I would like to introduce you to the new president of the Harrison Foundation for Women's Empowerment, my daughter, Margaret Harrison. A wave of thunderous applause filled the room, but Maggie barely registered it. Her eyes were fixed on Rick being led away in handcuffs. Realizing that some chapters in life do not just end, they are completely rewritten. The ballroom descended into chaos, yet a strange sense of peace settled over Maggie as she approached the microphone. Cameras flashed like bursts of lightning, reporters swarmed forward shouting questions, and New York's high society buzzed, thrilled to have a front-row seat to the scandal of the decade. Ladies and gentlemen, Maggie said, her voice slicing through the clamor, if you could give me your attention for just a few more moments. The room fell silent. They were captivated by the calm composure of a woman who should have been falling apart, but was instead glowing with quiet power. 22 years ago, I married Richard Reynolds because I loved him, she began. I truly believed in the man I thought he was. Tonight, I need you all to see the man he actually is. She motioned to David Martinez, who came forward holding a briefcase full of documents. Mr. Martinez, would you be so kind as to tell everyone what we found when we looked into the financial records of Reynolds Industries? With the focused precision of a man who had long prepared for this moment, David Martinez opened his briefcase. Ladies and gentlemen, our audit has uncovered that Mr. Reynolds has been methodically stealing money from the Reynolds Family Foundation for more than 3 years. More disturbing, he fabricated documents to make it look as though his wife was the person behind the entire scheme. A collective gasp swept through the crowd. Financial crimes were one thing, but setting up your own spouse was a shocking new low. The evidence is absolutely overwhelming, Martinez went on. We found forged signatures on bank transfers, emails sent from Mrs. Reynolds' computer after Mr. Reynolds accessed it, and even fake meeting notes where Mrs. Reynolds supposedly approved the transactions. Standing between two police officers, Rick tried to yell over the noise. That is not true. Maggie was aware of everything. She signed those papers. I signed blank pages you claimed were for insurance policies. Maggie's voice was firm as it carried through the microphone. I put my trust in my husband of 22 years when he asked me to sign papers for our family's financial security. The digital forensic evidence is very clear, Martinez added. Mr. Reynolds used his administrative privileges on his wife's email to send approval messages that she never composed. He even scheduled them to send while Mrs. Reynolds was at public charity functions, which created alibis for her while making it seem like she was conducting illegal business. But why? A voice called out from the audience. Why would Richard want to destroy his own wife? William Harrison moved to stand beside his daughter at the microphone, because he needed someone to take the fall for his crimes, and he believed my daughter was an easy target he could sacrifice. His voice boomed with the authority of a lifetime of power and influence. What he did not realize was that Margaret is far stronger than he ever gave her credit for. And he certainly did not know that she had a father who has been watching over her from a distance for 22 years. A reporter shouted, "Mr. Harrison! Can you tell us more about your connection to Mr. Reynolds' business empire?" "I would be happy to." William's smile was as sharp as a knife. For the last 2 decades, every significant contract that Reynolds Industries has secured was thanks to my influence. Every oil agreement, every government project, every business partnership that made Richard Reynolds a wealthy man, I made it all happen. A murmur spread through the room like a ripple in water. The implication was clear to everyone. I built that man's entire fortune as a way to provide for my daughter, who I could not claim because of sealed adoption records. I sent business his way. I opened doors for him, and I made him richer than he ever dreamed. All to ensure my daughter would live a comfortable life. The color drained from Rick's face, leaving it a sickly gray. "You are lying. I built my company on my own." "Son, you could not talk your way out of a parking ticket without my assistance," William cut in. "I have recordings of every phone call we have had for years, paperwork for every favor I pulled for you, and witnesses for every deal I brokered on your behalf." He took out a small digital recorder and hit the play button. Rick's voice, unmistakably desperate, echoed through the ballroom. "Bill, I really need you to speak with Senator Morrison about that pipeline deal. Without your backing, Reynolds Industries has no shot at the contract. You know I am completely reliant on your connections for these government jobs." William stopped the recording and said, "That conversation happened 3 years ago. I have dozens of others just like it." The officers on either side of Rick tightened their hold as he started to sway. And as of this morning, William announced, every single one of those contracts has been canceled. Reynolds Industries will be declaring bankruptcy by the end of the week. Sophia Blake, who had been quietly trying to slip out, froze in place. Her face turned ghost white as the full meaning of his words hit her. On top of that, Martinez chimed in, "The criminal probe has widened. We have found proof that Mr. Reynolds was also engaged in tax evasion, securities fraud, and laundering money through offshore bank accounts. Federal prosecutors believe he will face somewhere between 20 to 30 years in prison," Williams said, with deep satisfaction, "assuming he is found guilty on all charges, which seems very likely based on this evidence." Rick finally managed to speak. "These are all lies. You are destroying me because you hate that I fell in love with someone else." "No, Richard," Maggie said, stepping back to the microphone. "You destroyed yourself when you decided it was okay to steal money from charities for children. You destroyed yourself when you decided to frame me for your own crimes, and you destroyed yourself when you completely underestimated the woman you were married to for 22 years. She paused, her gaze sweeping over the crowd of faces that had made up her social world for decades. "I want every person in this room to understand something important. For 22 years, I was led to believe I was nothing without my husband. I thought his success was my safety. His approval defined my value, and his love was my entire identity. Her voice gained strength with every sentence. Tonight, I discovered I am the daughter of one of the most powerful men in the country. I learned that I am worth more money than I could ever have imagined. But the most important lesson is that my value has absolutely nothing to do with any man's opinion of me. The applause that followed was loud, heartfelt, and long. These people knew strength when they saw it, and they were watching the emergence of a new force in their social circles. The Harrison Foundation for Women's Empowerment will now be focused on helping women over 50 who are embarking on new journeys in their lives, Maggie went on. Whether they are escaping bad marriages, launching new careers, or just learning to see their own worth after a lifetime of putting others first. "What will happen to Mr. Reynolds' company?" a reporter shouted. "What about it?" William shot back. "It is worthless now that my contracts are gone, and it is toxic because of his criminal activity. I will be amazed if his creditors do not sell off every last asset within 60 days. Rick was led out in handcuffs, his entire empire collapsing behind him like a sandcastle against the tide. As the police guided him through the parting crowd, Maggie heard him say one final thing. "You will never be happy without me, Maggie. You are nothing without me." She looked at him with an expression that bordered on pity. "No, Richard, you are nothing without me. You just were never smart enough to see it." As the ballroom began to clear out, with reporters rushing to be the first to break the story, and socialites eagerly gossiping about the night's events, Maggie stood with her father by the now silent microphone. "How do you feel, my girl?" William asked her gently. "Free," she answered instantly. "For the first time in my adult life, I feel completely and totally free. And what do you plan to do with all that freedom?" A smile spread across Maggie's face as she looked out at the glittering city lights through the ballroom's towering windows. "I am going to change the world, and I will start tomorrow." 6 months later, Maggie was sitting on the porch of her new Texas ranch house, soaking in the calm sounds of horses and the wind moving through the trees. The early sun cast a golden and amber glow over the rolling hills, while the air smelled of fresh grass and new beginnings. While the house was more modest than her Manhattan penthouse, it felt immeasurably bigger. It was constructed from local stone and weathered wood, blending into the landscape instead of overpowering it. Sunlight streamed into every room, and each window framed a perfect view of the ranch that was quickly becoming her real home. Her phone buzzed, breaking the quiet of her morning thoughts. The screen showed Janet Cooper's name. "Honey, you are not going to believe this," Janet's voice said, sharp and clear, despite the miles. "Karma really knows how to pick its moments." "What's happened now?" Maggie asked, relaxing further into her rocking chair. "Your narcissistic ex-husband received his sentence yesterday. 25 years, with no chance of parole for 15. And you'll love this part. Sophia Blake testified against him to get immunity from prosecution." Maggie felt a small spark of satisfaction, but it was quickly replaced by a wave of pure relief. "So, it is truly finished?" "It is truly finished. Rick Reynolds will be an old man by the time he leaves prison, if he even survives that long. And apparently Sophia Blake is now with some tech billionaire out in Silicon Valley. The baby, a little girl, was born last month, by the way." "I hope she has more sense than her parents," Maggie said, and she genuinely meant it. "Speaking of smart women, I read that article in the Times about your foundation. $5 million raised in just 6 months. That is incredible," Maggie said with a smile, picturing the letters she received every day from women all over the country. These were women who had summoned the strength to leave toxic marriages, launch new careers, or just learn to see their own worth for the very first time. The money is helpful, but their stories are what truly count. Just yesterday, I received a letter from a woman in Ohio who finally left her abusive husband after 30 years together. She is 58 years old and just launched her own business. What kind of business? She creates custom quilts. She told me it was something she had always dreamed of doing, but her husband insisted it was a foolish waste of time. Maggie's voice filled with warmth. She included a picture of her very first paid project, which was a wedding quilt for her daughter. It was absolutely stunning. You are changing lives, Maggie. We are changing lives, and the foundation is only getting started. After ending the call with Janet, Maggie went to her home office, a bright room that looked out over the horse pastures. The walls were covered with thank you notes from women who had been awarded grants from the Harrison Foundation, with each letter serving as a powerful story of a second chance. Her laptop dinged, signaling a new email. It came from Dr. Sarah Chen, a 53-year-old physician who had used a foundation grant to establish a free women's health clinic in rural Montana. Dear Mrs. Harrison, the email started, I wanted to give you an update on how the clinic is doing. In our first 3 months, we have provided care to more than 300 women, many of whom had gone without proper medical attention before. Your foundation gave me more than just money. It gave me the courage to chase a dream I had given up on when I married 30 years ago. Thank you for reminding me that it is never too late to become the person you were always meant to be. Maggie printed out the email and placed it on the growing pile of success stories on her desk. Every single letter was a reminder of why she had started this journey. A gentle knock at her office door broke her concentration. William stood in the doorway, holding 2 mugs of coffee, dressed in his usual weekend attire of jeans and a work shirt. Morning, little girl. How are the world changers this morning? Changing the world, one woman at a time, Maggie answered, taking the coffee with a grateful smile. What are you up to today? I was planning to ride out to the north pasture to check on the new foals. Do you want to join me? I would love that. They saddled up 2 horses and rode together across the ranch, enjoying the comfortable quiet between them. The bond between the father and daughter was still developing, but it strengthened with each passing day. William had been wonderfully patient while Maggie learned how to trust again, and she had been equally gracious as he figured out how to be a father to a grown woman. I heard from Charlie Whitman yesterday, William mentioned, as they stopped to admire a mare and her foal grazing in the morning light. It was about the Reynolds Industries bankruptcy. The final liquidation is complete. The creditors managed to get back about 30 cents on the dollar. Everything else was eaten up by legal fees and Rick's criminal dealings. Maggie felt a brief twinge of pity for the employees who had lost their livelihoods, but she had no regrets about Rick's fate. What happened to the penthouse? It was sold at auction. Some tech guy from California bought it. A wry smile touched William's lips. He paid about half of what Rick did for it. And just like that, our old life is completely gone. Your old life, William corrected her gently. Your new one is just starting. They rode back toward the house as the sun made its way higher into the Texas sky. That afternoon, Maggie drove into Dallas to give a speech at the Women's Business Network's monthly luncheon. The ballroom at the Adolphus Hotel was filled with women of all ages, from new college graduates to experienced executives. Maggie stood at the podium and looked out at the sea of faces, each one reminding her of her own path. 6 months ago, I was certain my life was finished, she started. I was 47 years old, in the middle of a divorce, facing criminal charges, and I was absolutely convinced my best days were over. The room fell completely silent, with everyone focused on her every word. For 22 years, I had built my identity around someone else's achievements, someone else's validation, someone else's love. When all of that was stripped away, I believed I had nothing left. She paused, connecting with different women in the audience with her eyes. I was wrong. It was not that I had nothing left. I had everything I truly needed. I had my intelligence, my experience, my determination, and most of all, I had the courage to begin again. A woman in the first row put her hand up. Miss Harrison, starting over is much easier when you inherit $200 million. What about the rest of us who do not have that kind of safety net? Maggie offered a warm smile. You are 100% right. Money definitely makes things easier. But money cannot buy you courage. It cannot give you a vision, and it cannot create the willpower you need to rebuild your entire life from the ground up. She moved away from the podium, getting closer to the people listening. The very first step I took had nothing to do with spending money. It was making a phone call to a father I had never met. The second step was confronting a man who had controlled me for years. The third step was stepping into a courtroom and speaking the truth about my life. But what if we are afraid? Another woman called out. Then that means you are normal, Maggie answered with a laugh. I was terrified every single day for months on end. There are still days I feel scared. Being afraid does not mean you are disqualified from starting over. It simply means you are doing something that is important enough to matter. After her speech, Maggie was swarmed by women eager to tell her their own stories. There was a 60-year-old accountant who was launching her own firm, a 55-year-old teacher who was in the middle of writing her first novel, and a 49-year-old mother of 3 who was returning to school to become a doctor. You have given us hope, one woman told her, with tears welling in her eyes. You have shown us that our lives do not have to be over, just because our marriages came to an end. As she drove back to the ranch that evening, Maggie thought about how profoundly things had changed. 6 months ago, she was Margaret Reynolds, a woman who lived in the shadow of her husband's accomplishments. Tonight, she was Margaret Harrison, a woman who was building her very own legacy. Her phone vibrated with a text message from Janet. I saw a clip of your speech on the local news. You are going to be a force to be reckoned with now that you have all this confidence. Maggie smiled and texted her reply, I am certainly counting on it. When she turned into her driveway, she saw William on the porch with an open bottle of wine and 2 glasses waiting. How did the speech go? He asked as she sank into the chair next to him. I think we might have just recruited a few more world changers. Good, because the world could use some changing. They sat together in a comfortable silence, watching the sun dip below the rolling Texas hills. In the distance, horses grazed contentedly, and the first few stars started to emerge in the twilight sky. Daddy, Maggie said, trying out the word that still felt a little foreign, but increasingly right. Do you ever have regrets about the decisions you made when I was growing up? William was quiet for a very long time. I regret that I was too much of a coward to be the father that you deserved. But I do not for a second regret the woman you have become. You are so much stronger than I ever was, little girl. You are going to accomplish things I could never have even imagined. We are going to accomplish things, Maggie corrected him softly. Together. Together, William echoed. As the darkness settled in around them, Maggie felt a sense of peace she never knew was possible. For the very first time in her life, she was in the exact right place, doing the exact right thing. Her phone chimed with a final email for the night. It was from a young woman in Seattle who had discovered the foundation through an online article. Dear Mrs. Harrison, the message said, I am 28 years old and am going through a very painful divorce. My husband was controlling and emotionally abusive, and I have spent the last 5 years thinking I was worthless without him. Reading your story has given me hope that maybe I can put my life back together too. I do not know if you consider applications from women my age, but I just wanted you to know that you have already helped me by simply showing me what is possible." Maggie immediately began to type her reply. "Dear Sarah, courage does not have an age limit, starting over at 28, which means you have decades to create the life you deserve. Call our office on Monday. We would be happy to help." She pressed send and sank back into her chair, her eyes looking up at the countless stars spread across the Texas sky. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. "I am thinking about all the women out there who are sitting in the dark at this very moment, certain that their lives are over just because someone told them they were not worth anything." Maggie's voice was quiet but full of conviction. "I am thinking about how many of them we can find, how many lives we can help fix, how many dreams we can help make real again. And I am thinking that for 47 years I believed I was just a housewife. It turns out I was always meant to do something much greater." William lifted his wine glass. "To something greater. To new beginnings," Maggie said, tapping her glass against his. As they relaxed together on the porch of the ranch house, wrapped in the quiet sounds of the Texas night, Maggie understood something important. Sometimes the very best part of your life story begins right after someone else decides to end your chapter. She had found out that financial security after 50 was truly possible, that women helping other women could make miracles happen, and that a new start in the middle of life could change a victim into a winner. More than anything, she had learned that it is never too late to figure out who you are really meant to be. The stars twinkled down on Margaret Harrison, an oil heiress, the president of a foundation, and the perfect example that the best way to get back at someone is to live an incredible life. Her journey was just getting started. If Maggie's story touched your heart or reminded you of your own strength, please hit that like button and share this with someone who needs to hear it today. Drop a comment below telling me what part of her journey inspired you the most. And if you have not subscribed yet, join our community so you never miss another story of courage and transformation. This content was carefully researched, crafted, and manually edited by our team to bring you meaningful lessons and inspiration. Thank you for staying until the end.